Death on the Nile is directed by Kenneth Branagh and stars Kenneth Branagh, Gal Gadot, Armie Hammer, and among others. And this is the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express that deals with Kenneth Branagh's character, who is the detective that is investigating a murder that takes place, as the title suggests, that goes on the Nile. And so as the movie goes along, you start to unravel the murder mystery plot that happens, while also we get into stuff that involves where we get into some more backstory that involves with Perot's backstory from that enhances more of who he is. Now, here's a little backstory. Speaking of backstory, going into this film, I was kind of going with open-minded because I did remember when the first Murder on the Express came out that it really got me interested with seeing these whodunit kind of mystery movies coming back, especially with that and then Knives Out and everything. And the cast alone really got me excited with the first movie. And so when I first saw Murder on the Express, I liked it, but I did feel like it did lack some things that really kept it back from being great. But I still remember really enjoying the whole whodunit aspect, and a lot of the cast really made it work as well. And then, of course, also Kenneth Branagh I thought was one of the best things. I really enjoyed the movie a lot, especially with his detective character. And the way that he uses in his mustache and everything, and his charisma and his humor really held that movie together the most for me. And then with this one, this was actually a film that was actually supposed to come out within the last couple of years, and then ever since the pandemic came out, along with some other stuff that was going on behind the scenes that involved one of the actors, it took a while before the movie could get properly released, and I got really interested because I was seeing of how they were going to take it, continuing the story and everything. And in addition, seeing a whole lot of the, who's who in the cast like they got this time, and they don't have quite as big of a cast compared to say the first movie, but they did have some pretty big names in there, including Gal Gadot, and Armie Hammer and all of them that have been in several other big high profile movies. And so I got really interested, and also other known actors like Russell Brand and everyone, and just among others. And so after finally seeing the film, I can honestly say that I do like it, but I did feel like it did have some things that held it back from being great, like the first one, and there was some things that I still preferred in Murder on the Express compared to this one. But to get my pros out of the way, I'll say that the cast I thought were fantastic in this as usual. Kenneth Branagh being excellent as usual. His detective character I thought was very good as usual and fleshed out a lot this time, and I appreciate that they do a lot more emphasis on him, and they actually do a backstory of how he gets his mustache and everything that I thought was pretty interesting. And I just like the way that he develops his detective character in this, where he's trying to essentially not only solve the murder, but also comes across he gets into a lot more personal stuff this time that comes across with his relationship that builds with his friend played by Tom Bateman from the first movie. And I thought that the way the story played out, I thought was very compelling with that, and I appreciated that they gave a lot of good nuance to his character. And one of the other things I got to really enjoy too about it is from Kenneth Branagh's direction in this is the fact that he really likes to make it like an old school, like Hollywood style film, to where you do see a lot more. If the structure of it and the way it's paced, it really feels like something that would have came out in like the very old 60s or 70s kind of Hollywood era of films that they did back in the day. And I appreciate that they really took a lot of emphasis on relying on quick tricks to really pan out of trying to make things not as predictable at times. But I do have kind of a pro con with that, because there's certain things in the mystery they do in this that I think were a lot more predictable at times compared to the first movie. So I'll get to that in my cons, but his direction and the way that it's shot and the costume design, the production design, everything, it really does set the time period very fantastically in the 30s. And I got to really enjoy a lot of the lavish, areas when he goes to that's set in, including when they go to Egypt and everything on the Nile, the river Nile. And so that was great. And I also really got to enjoy a lot of the other standout performances, including Tom Bateman. And and Armie Hammer, and you know the rest of the cast. Like they all really brought some really great edge to it. And one of the ones that really surprised me the most was actually Russell Brand. I'm not really a Russell Brand fan myself because I've never really been too much of a fan of his comedy. I appreciate that he was playing a kind of against type performance in this. I thought he really stood out pretty good in this, quite well. So, and then one of the other aspects I enjoyed with this time was also with how we get to spend a whole lot of time with the characters that are set up before we actually get to the murder plot. And I think that they did give some good nuance. They do give some compelling stuff that they do with the characters to set it up in the movie. And there are some like things that kind of make you wonder where it's going with some of the characters' motivations and things like that can be red herrings that I thought was pretty played out well. But again, that's something I have to get into some of my cons because it does make it pretty predictable as the way it goes along with the plot. But the way that it plays it out in the second half, it gets really entertaining, especially when we get to the whole murder plot. When the murder actually happens, it becomes like Murder on the Express, where you're starting to really unravel a lot of where the detective is looking and investigating all the actual people that are on the ship, and taking into account with a lot of twists and turns that I actually thought was pretty interesting how they played it out. So there's aspects to the actual reveal and everything that I like, but then there's other things that hold it back because to get into some of my, this is kind of where I get into some of my cons. I did feel like the movie was playing into where the reveal and the motivations of the murder that takes place, I felt like it made sense. It was actually kind of foreshadowed from the very beginning of the film. And the way it plays out, there's a theme that I will not reveal, but let's just say that there's a theme that is very present in the film that has good meaning to it, but unfortunately, the way it plays it along with the entire film, with this with this key part, it makes it really, you kind of really know who the actual killer is going to be in this, who the killer is going to be in this one. So I think that was one of the things that really held it back because as they keep repeating the whole thing, as the movie goes along, is with repeating the whole idea of what's going on and everything, I just felt like that kind of made me really go like, okay, I already know what they're doing with this, so there's not really a surprise here. So yeah, that was one of the things I was like, oh, they really had to do it, didn't they? They could have went, in my head, there was a twist that I think they really could have done that I won't go into detail, but if they would have put a spin on it, it would have made it pretty clever with how they would have wrapped it up. Now, this is based on a series of books that I also heard that I'm thinking that they were trying to follow more of. So if it's from the books, let me know in the comments because I'm actually curious if it actually does follow of the book of Death on the Nile. But with that being said, though, there's things to the actual reveal, and there's unexpected moments that do happen in this that I thought was interesting to see. It's just that when you actually find out like who's behind everything, it's where it's like, I actually already knew that from the beginning. So that is one of the things that really hold it back a lot. Because I had more of a shock and more I was more surprised in Murder on the Orient Express than I was compared to this, as far as who reveals the killer. But with that being said, though, I still got a kick out of the movie because I still thought it was well directed, it was well crafted. It just could have been a whole lot better with a lot of the things that they also could have established more with the other characters, because there's other characters that they bring into that we don't spend a whole lot of time with. And so that was one of the things I had issue with the first one that unfortunately is here at this time as well. And so it really felt like they could have put more emphasis on some of the other characters that didn't really get to shine too much. So as a whole, and I also did feel like the pacing kind of made it a little bit slower in the very first half of the film, to where I get why they were trying to build it up and everything, but it did really feel like it was taking a whole lot of its time before we get to the actual second half. And so with it really picking up, it really made it go up for me. That being said, I'm going to give the movie a high average Joe on the film for each meter. So those of you who've also seen Death on the Nile and Murder on the Express, and also the books that these are based on, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.